Remote. No, it is not a controller. You know, the thing that you use for your TV, your television, or whatever majig. What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Fervent 4. Did you know that only 4% of businesses ever cross the annual $1 million revenue mark? Hello, I'm Zack Miller, author of Anomaly. With me today, I have my co-host, Tim Ryan, lead man at StartWheel.org. Thank you so much for joining us. The Fervent 4 is a weekly show each and every Thursday at 11 a.m. dedicated to sharing insights into growing a world-class business, no matter the climate. Okay, pop quiz. Erica McMannes of Instant Teams was once on an edition of the Fervent 4. What edition was it? Leave that in the comments. And if you win, you will receive
an honorable mention.
An honorable mention, and we'll put your mugshot on the screen and say hello. Erica, how are you?
I'm good. Excited to be back. A lot has happened in the last 18 months on many levels.
It has. I can't remember if we talked about this before. You know, if I was a good host, I would have rewatched the video from before, but you know, I did not do that. That's terrible on me. But I remember I called you about 5 years ago. I'd gotten out of my physical office in downtown, and I was like, I want to start this remote. And so I was like doing remote things then. I was like, we're just going to do everything remote, everything digitally. And it seemed like a lot of the world was going to start going towards that. And I called you as someone who had a company that was doing this already. And I said, do you think like there could be a podcast around this? And I remember you said, yeah, it would be cool. You should do it. And then I never did anything with it. And it's interesting, like how, like, I feel like I had good ideas, like on that. It was the right time to get out of the office, obviously with this last, you know, the 2-year mark, if we're looking at it, like it's been wild, but remote was really still at the time, even March 2020 of last year, something that I think people frowned upon, didn't understand, insert, you know, 10,000 other buzzwords now around it.
Yeah.
In your mind, it's September 2021, however many months that is. In your mind, has anything changed from a remote perspective on the things that you did before? You know, maybe like late 2019 to 21.
It's funny, we talk about it like it was like a century ago, right? Just because so much has changed for sure. I think
way
it's
back yonder in 2019.
Seems like
there was a girl named Erica.
I think it's the whole framework that has changed. Like back, whether it's 2016, 2019, like there was companies who were 100% remote were like remote first, right? Like we were talking about the future of work. We were laying the groundwork for what the future of the workforce could look like. I mean, there's entire industries surrounding that. And then boom, all of a sudden the future of work is now. And so I think it's like a weird paradox to transition through when you think so far out in the future with what you're building and just hoping that you're going to be a part of history when it gets there. And then boom, all of a sudden you're there. And that's definitely what has happened in the past year and a half.
Do you think people like don't understand? Do you think people like the tangible aspect of things just don't grasp remote because they've done things in that like face-to-face way? Like, oh, you go to a restaurant, there's food that way. You're in retail, you're that way. You go to your office and you talk to people. It just, they didn't grasp it. Is that the kind of crux of it? Or
yeah, I think work has never been remote at scale. And so those of us who like hoped for it and knew it was coming, embraced it early, early adopters, so to speak. But I mean, especially big business, right? Businesses who have been brick and mortar, whether they're small or enterprise, they've, you know, we've always done it this way for decades. And a lot of those leadership teams are, you know, older and they just don't even know how to wrap their brains around, okay, how do we take this function or how do we take this team or how do we take strategy in a remote way?
Yeah. I mean, it's strange just in the sense of if you look back before all this happened and you told somebody that, yeah, I have a home-based business, you weren't really taken seriously. You know, it's like you had to have an office in a building or a storefront with the sign out front before you were taken seriously. And now everything is like totally transformed, that everybody has had to go that way. And now people are fighting. If you know, as companies try to bring everyone back in the offices, everyone's fighting, but they don't want to go that way. So if you experience that on your end in terms of, are things status quo in the sense of there's not been a real push to bring people back to the office, or is it everything's just cool staying where at home?
Yeah. I mean, we have been 100% remote from day one. So we have never had a brick and mortar business. We've
right.
Never
like in terms of like the clients that you all serve.
If anything, the past 18 months have been great for business, right? Because people are either just asking like, hey, how are you scaling? How do you communicate remotely? And so a lot of the things that we've built internally and structurally at Instant Teams to build and communicate with large remote teams have definitely become even sometimes more value driven than like the actual business model in some cases, because people just need to understand like how to communicate and how to keep people driven in the remote space. So that has changed a lot. Like people are quickly like, oh, and it's also become like risk management, right? If another closure happens and I have, 200 people on my team, what are we going to do? And so like, well, why don't you just restructure to keep people remote if everybody's happy and it's working versus having to transition again.
So with that, one of the questions I really want to hear from your point of view is there become a salary distinction between people that say, hey, I'm willing to take 30% less in order for me to stay at home? Or what are you seeing on that front from a compensation standpoint?
Yeah, I don't know. My camera just went fuzzy. I'm not sure why. So
that's the number one thing. That's the problem with remote work. I can't see in full detail. Here, I'll take my glasses off, and then it'll do the same thing.
There you go.
So that's a hack. Just snap at it. There you go. Yeah, it's definitely been an opportunity to bring like democratizing what people expect with salary. I mean, again, us being remote from day one, startup, building up to where people, full-time salaries, salaried employees versus hourly and all of that. I actually just saw there's a big, conversation on LinkedIn. Remote work, hybrid happens every single day in the LinkedIn space. I think it was just Zillow is like, hey, we're going to pay people 100% what they were making before, versus Facebook and other companies like, oh no, you're going to get a pay cut if you're remote. From a logical foundation, like if people are doing the work and they're delivering and they're being productive, there's no reason to penalize people from being remote. I mean, yes, in a way, at least for me, being remote is a benefit and a perk in and of itself. But yeah, no, people are still doing work and they're contributing in harder ways in some ways. Like salary should not be cut. Personal opinion.
Yeah. So let's dive deeper into that, because I think I think you said the logical. What was the word you used?
Yeah. Logically, like if you think about the productivity and the output of people, or your expectations and their job descriptions, none of that's changing. It's just
But when they're putting together their salary, I would assume logically that there's a lot of things that they're thinking about in that number, because of the space that they're in and stuff like that. So how, as a business owner, like when you have a big company that comes to you and says, hey, like we're kind of around the same conversation that we're having, like, we don't think we should do this because logically our expenses are tied to this person because this is the way that things are. Like, how do you explain to them that this doesn't make sense for the way that you've put together your breakdown of expenses? Because I guess ultimately that's what you're saying is like the way they're looking at their office. And I think that's a lot of it, right? Is, they're paying thousands of dollars, in some cases, a ridiculous amount of money for bandwidth, for, water coolers, whatever.
Yep.
And now you're saying, oh, by the way, we're going to still have to pay all that stuff. And the amount of money that you pay the employee is still going to be there. Oh, and somehow in this, that employee is going to start asking, probably, because we haven't really seen this yet, but that employee is going to start asking for a stipend for all this other stuff too. Oh, I want money for my Wi-Fi every month. I want money for whatever it is.
Yeah.
How do you handle that conversation? Or what do you say when someone, I think I'm doing a bad job of explaining it, but I think you get the gist of what I'm trying to say. Like, it seems the logic to me actually is on the side of the business owner, not the remote worker. So
that's where my logic is too, is from my mind, especially if you go 100% remote, right? If you have an organization, which I understand some companies can't go 100% remote, just whatever industry reasons why. If you go 100% remote, then you don't have to pay lease. You don't have to pay electricity. Like the cost savings there is so enormous that my logic there is, why would you also cut somebody's pay, right? You're already saving a lot of money to have this company 100% remote and allowing people to work from home. So why would you also cut? But I see your point if it's a hybrid model, right? So I think there's different like paradigms of the conversation.
Hybrid, or they haven't been able to get out of that yet because most offices signed 5 to 10 year leases, right? And let's say they're 1 year into it. Yes, I understand a pandemic happened, but I think that's why a lot of people are trying to bring people back in, right? I think a lot of people get the collaboration aspect of it. I think a lot of people are seeing that aspect of it, right? Where people are talking like this and they're like, I can't see that person forever. Oh yeah, I'm still here, right? But it's that person isn't present. Yes, there's a ton of other stuff. The chief economist from ZipRecruiter, Julie Pollack, says, although remote, she's going to agree with you, although remote work comes with fewer costs, such as gas for commutes, employees will argue their quality of work hasn't changed, so they're patient either. At the same time, I feel like a lot of times the business owner is always set up for failure in the United States from a lot of the taxes, the risk associated. So it's like, here's another one on there. And that's always been my battle, is the entrepreneur is throwing up everything. Yes, it's a huge risk reward, but like, let's give a dog a bone every once in a while. Like, and it's very much an employee-based environment. I get that, but that employee has got to get money from their, the business owner that's willing to pay them. So
yeah, I think that's a huge gap, is the compliance and the states. And that's a huge gap that's happened because, as we were all talking about the future of work and like hoping policies would change and things would kind of catch up with the ability to grow and manage remote teams. We all know federal, state legislation, like it's going to continue to be 10, 20 years behind what the workforce is now doing. And in my mind, will 100% continue to do.
Yeah, it's like college. It's like they're teaching you things that are so behind. It's like,
yes. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's not an easy, it's not an easy situation. My personal benefit is, as a business owner and entrepreneur, I mean, we have over 500 remote employees now. I've never done it another way. That's a privilege, right? Like I haven't had to make a transition. I've built from the ground up a foundation that runs a remote organization. So there's huge benefit in that, right? We were ahead of the curve. So we're going to continue to talk about these things for years, and kind of people are going to have to figure out what works for them. One solution's not going to work for all, but I do think the workforce is going to continue to demand remote work. It allows is that a word? I've made it up today if it's not. It allows different types of D&I opportunities, right, for people to contribute to an organization from a location that's nowhere near a headquarters, right? It opens up a talent pool. It allows a family to exist in and around you, right? It's not like work and home. And yes, there are downsides to that I'm sure we could get into too, but trending and labor force, even before COVID, was slowly, remote work has been increasing and the demand has been increasing. So if anything, I don't think it's going anywhere.
Are you stuck at your home office, socially distanced coffee shop, or your fancy all bricked out corner office, wondering why no one can see your business and sales are all over the place? Sounds like you need a pro. That's why I developed the Anomaly Academy. Insert clever copy here. Oh, I guess I was supposed to put something else there. Oops. You can grab access to the Anomaly Academy now at zackmillersays.com/Anomaly Academy.